Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another episode of the Gun Lock here. I'm Mark, beautiful, fine folks, and we were asking questions heading into MSI, especially maybe even after the Flying Oyster series for T1. We're saying we really only had 7 games that we saw them level up. Is this the real level that they're at? They weren't sweating the matchup against BLG, and now we know why, because this is fully international level T1. Absolutely everyone across the board was firing on all cylinders, unfortunately, for BLG.
It's one of those situations where you're playing a video game, mom, dad's calling you, it's dinner time, you hit the pause button, you got to get back. Maybe you've taken a couple days between the last time you played the game and you pick it back up. Little bit of unfamiliarity with the controls. You see that with the Oyster series going the distance it was. Were we gonna find the T1 form that was picking up where they left off, dominating, completing the boss run in the LCK playoffs to make sure that they're at MSI? Well, the answer is yes. The boys found their form and they were monsters against BLG.
And Knight has been on an absolute tear. We saw him give some praise to JoJo for his laning. What's the praise to give Mr. Unkillable Demon King after this series? Because at times in spring, we were talking about Faker being like outside of the top 5 in terms of mid laners in the LCK, and no other player on the planet can turn a switch like this where you have a series and you're looking at this guy going, this is the GOAT, no question. Why'd we ever doubt this guy?
There's nobody that makes the game-breaking plays, the decisive killing knife blow like someone that Faker has become for this T1 team. I think the combination of the obvious and incredible raw skill, the mental side of it, and then the experience going through all these different metas, strengths, weaknesses of T1's own roster and everything else to find the peak formula and how he can be the catalyst for the rest of his talented squad. Absolutely, there is no match for when it comes to him in the mid lane. You see it in these dire moments. You see it in all the matchups, whatever it is. He is the one making the play, making the moment for T1 and enabling and encouraging the rest of his teammates to feel that type of energy and making these type of plays as well.
And even if that moment is just surviving a 4-man gank, which he did about 53 times in the series, and obviously a lot of those plays are the headline, especially the Orianna game out of him. But really, you go across the board here. Owner absolutely ice cold on his objective control and smites all 3 games in this series. The team coordination, the Baron rushes, which this team is synonymous with in this era. And how about Doran? Some of these Ornn engages, the flanks on Renekton that were game securing, and of course, as always, when T1 is at their best, the best mechanical outplays and displays are always Kyria.
Oh, baby, yeah, the rest of the roster really was on point. I don't know if you're going to find a higher peak form for T1 than what you saw in this series against BLG. The perfect matchup and against them, and perfect reading a lot of these times is what the play, what the motivation was for BLG, what their objective were, and how to absolutely dismantle it in a lot of ways. Even with BLG, I think, it's not going to show you it with the stats or with the game, but they were playing okay. They were playing to a high level. They were making the proactive, aggressive type of moves that you come to know and love about a BLG, but every single time there was an answer. There was a separate play. There was an escape for T1 to make sure that they're the ones finding a way to build an advantage.
And I'm legit starting to buy into these memes that T1 plays like they do in spring, so there's legit no VODs for you to study. You're going to watch T1 going down 10k gold against Nongshim and say, why are we sweating this T1 team? They're losing to the Bros and the Noodle Company. We got no problem matching up against them. And then you see, yes, this series, maybe the best series that they've had since Worlds, and even including Worlds.
And I think you've seen one of the differences, the different flavor of that dominance that Doran does bring to this roster. You saw it in this game. He goes toe-to-toe with Bin in so many of these avenues that you're checking within the game. And he's coming out on top. He's coming out ahead. One of the very best, one of the most aggressive options in that top side. And Doran is able to answer him step by step for T1 really thought that this was, again, the peak, the highest of highs that I really have seen T1 in start to finish. It was full throttle.
So now, the comment about them not being worried about BLG from Faker. Now he did an interview after this BLG series and basically was asked, why did you think BLG would be easier? He essentially said they were playing at such a high level against CFO. He was surprised that they took them to game 5 and was matching against them because he felt that good about T1. And combine that with what I imagine T1 did a lot of extra prep, probably for BLG, seeing that potential matchup, or maybe BLG has been struggling in scrims too.
Could be a possibility. I think the biggest one for me, though, was just the belief, the confidence, the synergy that this T1 roster had on the day, right? Every single engage always had the right guy to follow it up, the right skill, combination, saving ultimates, all sorts of things like this. Always had it, and everybody had each other's back was the biggest thing I think you saw within this one. That type of coordination, that type of chemistry, that isn't just a snap your fingers. That isn't just a, hey, this guy's really good. This guy's really good. I'm sure it's going to, that is something that does take time. That isn't a guarantee even for the best of the best. But I think you're seeing it with this T1 roster, and you're seeing just how good it can be when the best of the best are able to hit this type of chemistry, this type of, in sync synergy.
And I'm gonna go really deep pocket for this one to reference, because obviously these guys have played together for multiple years. It's kind of like Zelda 4 Swords. If anyone played this one, it's a deep cut. When you played 4-player, you had to have each guy play one of the little links and stand on different switches to activate things, different spots on the map, but you had to all be on the same page. And that's what this core of T1 is. They can all collectively flip that switch to be at this world-class level, and that's exactly what you've seen since that LCK playoff run.
And I think the question is now going to be, is this an unstoppable machine? Can nobody get their hands in there and rip a part out, take a gear, change the rotation on it or something else, to where then it's not in sync? It's not in the same type of function. You're not making the same predictions and reads off of what your teammates and opponents are going to do to disrupt that. I think that is one of the angles to keep an eye out for T1. But as we've seen, the veterans, the experience, it's going to take a lot to really throw them out of this order.
If there's one team to throw a wrench in the machine that is T1, I think it might be a certain squad that has now won 21 series in a row and a lot of head-to-head matchups against T1 in very high-stake matchups. Their next opponent, of course, we're talking about Gen.G, whose plot armor definitely needed to be activated in this series against anyone's legend, highlighted by, if you rubbed your eyes, you would think Duro was Lahens in that bot lane with the Blitzcrank MVP in game 5.
Oh man, you're never out of it when you have that Blitzcrank. And again, you're just one skill shot away from making that play.
Or 15 in the case of Duro in this game.
Yeah, time after time, and again, hits that shot, hits that big time play to make a pick happen, set up the priority for Gen.G. And he was already a monster throughout this series. You can go back on the Poppy. I thought he was fantastic, doing a really good disruptive job setting up these type of plays. He has been really a star for me for Gen.G at this event. And again, it gets loses some ground because everybody's a star. Everybody is fantastic with Gen.G, and everyone is playing fantastic right now. But I really do think that Duro's someone that came in with a couple of question marks, maybe some concerns or doubts from the international community compared to the superstars on his lineup. I think he has more than proved his spot and his earned a bit of trust from the world on seeing what he can do for Gen.G.
And I think it's even more paramount or noticeable in this series because, let's face it, for the first half at the very least, and really most of this series, we were talking about Shanks and what a high level he was playing at, and a relatively pedestrian series out of Chovy. I know pedestrian for Chovy is world class for other people, but the level that Chovy's been at throughout the entire year, this was one of his more mediocre series, and it's still Gen.G coming away with the victory.
And this is something that, can happen from time to time, even, of course, for the best of the best players. And we've seen this in Chovy's career. But the difference, of course, is making sure you have a team that can step up in these moments, can deliver, can provide other options, other avenues of that victory. And I really think that this Gen.G, this bottom lane, the combination that you can bring through what Canyon presents as well, I think that is one of these angles that Gen.G just still remains this perfect unbeaten raid boss awaiting T1, where we finally get at the very least the LCK playoffs that we were so brutally denied, I think, just a couple of weeks, maybe a month ago at this point. Very happy that we're going to get this showdown, but you're right. If there is one squad that I think can disrupt a T1 that is reaching the highest of highs, the best, combination of perfection I've really seen from them. And again, this is a world championship caliber roster. It's going to be Gen.G, and I can't wait until we get that head-to-head smackdown.
We're just getting the spring finals of LCK a little bit later on in the year in this matchup, and I think it's the most easy guarantee that you'll have all year to say this will smash the viewership records for this MSI event.
And I can just say, again, this would be fantastic under old traditional type of rule sets and everything else, but think about the excitement, the explosive entertainment that awaits us with fearless draft between these two, where the meta is, what options are available, how you can push and strategize within it. I cannot wait. This is absolutely going to be one of those must-watch matches and moments, and hey, getting to have it here in Canada, even better.
Especially, again, with the form the T1 is in, and Gen.G, I'm not going to say, being in a slump or anything, but not being as dominant, and that shouldn't take away from anyone's legend, because AL, again, we got to highlight Shanks one more time specifically. I know Flandre was playing he's playing Smolder top, but this was a keen difference throughout this series. But Shanks in particular, the guy who we've been talking about making that international debut, a first massive test against an LCK squad in, Chovy, the mid laner right now. And Shanks held his own, man.
I think a little bit of a benefit as well, a little bit of a boost, because it's not the disappointment that top eSports just freshly laid on the international stage for the LPL. So having anyone's legend show up and actually show their teeth, show that they are this ferocious team that you do hear about, you are warned about from a lot of analysts and whatnot, I think was a good showing at the very least. Still obviously areas that you want to clean up, that you want to be better and stronger at when you're going up against the ultimate wall and skill test that is an unbeaten team, a champion level team like a Gen.G. I'm still very hopeful from what we can see from them. And again, Shanks still first international experience, and getting to see these type of performances after this long must be a very sweet reward for so many loyal LPL fans.
I will say, this is a top esports moment if AL loses to CFO in the next round to get eliminated.
Yeah, and that's nothing against CFO.
They've been amazing. They've been amazing.
That still is about the expectations and the pressure that exists for a region as big, as passionate as the LPL. But yeah, CFO, that is going to be where we head down into the losers bracket territory. And I think still right now, providing the strongest test in that losers bracket is going to be the Oysters at this point. That's nothing about FlyQuest. I think they were very good and very impressive, and we'll talk about that for sure. But I think the Oysters right now still, to me, are that team to beat. If you are one of these teams heading down into the losers bracket, it is that little bit of, we got the bigger dogs, and the bigger dogs right now are the Oysters from the LCP.
And you want to talk about region expectations. Definitely not as high as the LPL coming into this, reaching all-time lows maybe for Europe heading into this event, but we are certainly at an all-time low for expectations now as both European teams bow out 0-4 in the main stage, 3 game wins combined between the two of them. And then the question becomes, which is more disappointing? And you can probably make arguments for both. Obviously, Koi had higher expectations as the top seed from the LEC and were probably more competitive. Not probably, definitely more competitive against BLG and their matchup before, but still, BLG and the Oysters, but still incredibly disappointing because some of the level and tilt that you could feel against the Oysters was very real, and they really did not do anything to make Driver get out of his comfort zone. This guy got his main pocket picks throughout this series.
I think one of the more annoying things about it, it kind of felt like there was almost some sort of arrogance towards the LEC or from Koi, where it's like, oh, how are we getting beat by this? How are these guys good? Type of thing where it's like, yes, the LCP is good. Yes, they will take your lunch money and laugh at you and go to the next round and see you later. Bye-bye. Go to the airport. It's not going to be one of these easy stomp rolls over you can't take for granted and you can't underestimate anymore. And I think that was one of the more frustrating things because, again, a lot of people, even European analysts, of course, have been talking about that, have been bringing that up. And to see that from Koi, a team, again, that plays their very best when they take things the most serious, when they are the most locked in, the most focused for these things, like these big rivalry matches against Carmine Corp and that type of run that we saw. I think part of it is a disappointment in realizing maybe this is a Koi that can only reach those levels in that short period, right? If they're able to go from match to match, series to series in that pocket window with no, okay, and then we're flying over here and then it's a week later and whatever type of thing that it has been for MSI, where there is a gap and where we are seeing their performance levels and coordination all the way through. And then you get to G2. And for me, G2 is a bigger disappointment because of just simply being at the conclusion of where I've finally feel like I can stamp my answer, my report card on this team, and it's not enough. It needs to be dismantled. It needs to be broken down. And I don't know to the full extent how much you want to do that. Do you want to go all the way down to the studs and leave a guy who is the stud in caps with this roster? Is it a thing where you go from the European perspective, maybe as a fan, and go, okay, I want him on a different organization that's going to do a different type of strategy, different resources, whatever, than what we've already seen with G2? Or is it one of these ones where maybe you hold on to another veteran, a guy like a Broken Blade or a Hans Sama? You count on different, you go back a year ago, Broken Blade is performing at a high level on the international stage, anything but a high level this year type of one. So are you sticking with him with these type of questions? But at the end of the day, my answer for this G2 is it's not enough. If it's not enough against FlyQuest 3-0, it's not going to be enough against the Oysters. And it's certainly not going to be enough against that next level up where you're going against those winners bracket teams, those top of the LPL, those top of the LCK teams.
I think for sure the answer is G2 is the more disappointing one, despite having less expectations as that second seed, because they have that core, that nucleus of Hansama, Caps, and Broken Blade, who we've seen perform internationally against LCK and LPL teams. Obviously, Broken Blade, this whole tournament was probably the worst tournament, definitely the worst tournament he'd had on G2 at this point. And I mean, it was really only Caps who was playing at a high enough level. And I think Inspired, Busio, and Masu all talked about playing this series. They felt like G2 was playing nervous, playing tentative, like not playing confidently throughout. And you could see that on the Rift. In Game 3, it was pop your eyes out, glaringly obvious, like dying on dives at level 5 without even using abilities. But even throughout this series, this was not the confident G2 that we've seen level up at international events. I know Lebrav has only been to one international event before. I know Skewmond is a rookie, but it really felt like this team was just splintered. Remember, they barely even got to the main stage, and I think people were just kind of expecting them to turn things around, and spoilers, they did not.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I think one of the things that I'm, is popping into my head so much about this is thinking about, again, that conversation. Do you go, roster all the way down to Caps? Who do you keep around? These type of things. And I'm thinking about one of the, again, and asking, can G2 make these moves? Can G2 still be that home to provide an ultimate winning, a high level international competing environment for someone like Caps? They tried to get someone like Kaliste, and I think someone like Kaliste is that type of difference maker, that type of dog that has that fire in him to keep pushing and individually be good enough to matter on the international stage. I don't think you're surrounded by enough of that with Caps right now, and that's, again, one of these ones where he's with Carmine Corp happy over there and everything else, but you got to find these type of guys, and you haven't for G2 right now, and you're seriously lacking it, and it's a pain point to your loyal fans and region.
And, obviously, we still have a whole split 3 that's a quick turnaround. We have the eSports World Cup, which is like 4 days after this. So I don't think there's any way, shape, or form that G2 is making roster changes heading into this split. It's probably going to be a 2026 thing. But after this event, this is the first time in like half a decade that I've actually felt like, yeah, maybe Caps leaves G2, because the sadly poetic way this FlyQuest series ends with G2 just engaging 4v5, and Caps, who's the only Fed member, doesn't even get to be in the fight, and you see him scratch his head, and he looked more down than I've ever seen Caps in a series loss. And I feel like you got to be wondering, maybe there's other opportunities in EU, and if Caps ever becomes a free agent or is on the market, I think every team is calling.
It almost feels like a situation of, someone's, all the scientists, all the experts are saying, hey, a meteor is going to hit the planet. We got to do something about this. I don't see no meteor in the sky. What are you talking about? All of a sudden, you're out of here 3-0 to FlyQuest, continuing disappointment. The meteor's right there. Oh no, the meteor. What do we do? It's too late. It's already.
Caps is in the bunker, but nobody else made it.
Got to get this one done. I think this is, again, G2 is that overwhelming disappointment for me amongst the disappointment soup that is the LEC, and they're showing at this event, I think, at the end of the day.
And unfortunately, the NA versus EU rivalry, it's always kind of a side quest at these international events. But, last MSI, G2 had the big run against Top Esports, but Team Liquid was taking down Fnatic. So side quest here, only with one team being sent. It's FlyQuest who takes the pride for North America. Obviously, their tournament continues, and it's going to be a difficult matchup going forward. It's such an insane losers bracket run at MSI if you start in that first round of losers.
It is, but that's the gauntlet. That is the ticket that you have earned yourself when you do go down into the loser bracket type of situation. I'm very excited for this head-to-head for FlyQuest again. You get another chance at a top-tier team from the LPL, a team that is going to have a fire, something to prove to themselves.
A very rare day off at this MSI before we blitz non-stop action to close out the tournament, and we'll be here to break it all down. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, absolute beauties. Thanks so much for hanging out, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.